It's an interesting one. I mean, suicide has always been with us, but it's troubling because there are so many different categories, and it is one of the leading killers of the young. um, Part of it is, I think, untreated illnesses, PTSD, these things, especially in military and law enforcement, can be everything from trauma to TBIs, these types of things. I think the biggest issue with suicide is a lack of meaning. Um, at the end of the rainbow, a lot of people, they get into a mental state and they don't see a purpose for life. Nietzsche used to say that people could endure anyhow if they know the why. And if you don't know the why, then you're just suffering needlessly. If you're suffering with a purpose, then you can always believe that one day when you get where you want to go, it'll be better. So people get caught in these thought patterns and they get worse and worse and they escalate and they don't believe they'll ever end and they don't believe they'll ever get resolved. So there's actually a whole school of psychology that studies the quest for meaning. It's called logotherapy. It was started by Viktor Frankl. It's one of the three fields of psychotherapy, competing with Jung and Adler. And basically, logotherapy is just the mechanisms a person goes through to discover their meaning in life, the purpose in life, as subjective as that might be. And it turns out when people have goals, they have a purpose, they have meaning, there's not a single study that you can find that says that that person has a higher suicide rate than others. In fact, it's quite the contrary. They usually have a significantly lower suicide rate and incidence overall of mental health. Why? Because they have the resilience to be able to get through ephemeral states of mind and they build to climb out of things. Now, there are certainly biological components to these things. If your neurotransmitters are all screwed up, it's hard not to be. People are born bipolar, schizophrenia, and other conditions. And you can't will yourself out of it. You can't be like, I'm not going to be bipolar today. And so it's always difficult because if you don't get treatment for those things, they can have catastrophic impacts on your life, not just suicide, but obviously your relationships. Look at Kanye West. There's a very good possibility that Charlie Sheen, Kanye West, these others suffer from some form of bipolar disorder. We don't know, we'd have to see the medical records, but you could kind of map the behavior to the description of those things. And it's plausible to imagine a world where that's a correct diagnosis. Now, from afar, you say, well, we can't do anything. And society is entertained by their crazy antics. But deep inside, you have these people who are really hurt and they're going through hell. And basically, you're witnessing self-destruction real time. The destruction of their businesses, the destruction of their commercial endeavors, their relationships, the respect in society, and ultimately their social connections as well as their viability as actors, musicians, or other things. And we just say, oh, well, move on. So I think there's a meta component with the suicide rates as well. It's society just doesn't seem to care. We make other people's suffering a game. And it's hard to live in a society that lacks rites of passage, gamifies your pain, or derives entertainment from your pain and suffering, and doesn't seem to value at all your recovery, just your downfall. So probably a combination of those factors: a mental health epidemic, an addiction epidemic, an empathy epidemic, meta factors in the way that society is constructed, a large amount of meaning crisis in people. And, unfortunately, that's where we're at. And it's tough. It's real tough because it tends to affect the young. It's one of the few conditions that I think is still in the top 10 amongst the young, suicide. So a lot of people with a lot of potential, if only they just had the right foundations, they'd be able to get where they need to go. But anyway, that's conversation for a different time. And as Paul Harvey said, now you know the rest of the story. Thank you all for listening today. I'll cut a little short because my voice is not going to last much longer. next time I'm on, I'll be back to normal. Just a little under the weather today. Cheers.